Good morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Friday. No, it's not. It's Thursday. I was just fooling you. It feels like Friday because there won't be a Friday this week, and no update tomorrow because, of course, it being Good Friday, and most of the markets will be closed and brokers won't be trading. So here we go. So on our Thursday stroke Friday update, uh, the 29th of March, here goes. So, from a daily perspective, or perspective even, on the euro dollar, we've got the pivot swing sitting in there, which is pretty bearish signal at the best of times. Um, Euro's really just come back. I talked about this in the trading room last week, maybe how the euro cannot get away from that moving at that monthly pivot too well. It's only ever spent two days at the most away from it and come back and touched it. So it's been very pivotal for this month. What's going to happen next then? Well, looking at today, it all looks bearish. I think we will get some more, possibly get a more bearish downside. However, things always fall us quite often first thing in the morning, and what looks bright and sunny suddenly turns a bit cloudy. And it could well do. I'm just sort of looking through these time frames. To be fair, we're looking down in this 4 hour. We've got lower highs, lower lows coming in, so it's all showing into that bearish nature. At the moment, we're sold off into the 21 moving average here. We have got the pivot just above us into that 200, and I will be tempted to wait a little bit. I mean, we could have just drawn and tried to sell a bit early this morning into that 21 maybe, but I should be just waiting and see if we get a bit of a retrace, see what happens first thing this morning. It's ending the sort of month, it's ending financial years for some people. There'll be flows going backwards and forwards. It could be a very bitty day, so we'll see how it shapes up. Of course, at the moment, my bearing would be more bearish than anything else, but I've got to keep an open mind on that. So the pound, then I would say there's no real significant option interest actually on the euro dollar there, apart from around about 122. So I'll just come back to that euro dollar. Just look at where 122 is relatively to current price. It's quite a way under. So we'd need to see some quite a bit of selling, 116 pips or something, to make that expire worthless. Right. Whoops. Wrong button. I really now want to press the pound. Here we go. So pound dollar, and well, again, bit of a bearish look. It hasn't really done pivot swing or anything like that, but it does look bearish. It has already broken yesterday's lows. So let's just come down the time frames. Lower highs confirmed in. It's not far off of this trend line that I'm just going to move up here. If I can only move it to its right direction, it's not far off that trend line. It's quite a key trend line. You'll see if we get buyers coming into that this morning. Of course, the momentum's down. Everything looks quite bearish here. But again, I'm keeping a bit of an open mind. Arguably, there's divergence across here. Let's just have a look on something that looks a little bit longer scale here. Yeah, there's a bit of divergence sitting on there as well. So keep an open mind. We have got daily pivot above us yet to be hit. So it's yeah, bit let's see what happens this morning. I quite would like to see if we trade towards that daily pivot. We'll see. Okay, dollar yen. Well, yesterday it flew to the upside eventually. It was a sticky old move though, and at times looked like it was gonna, well, continue to roll over, continuous rollover at 1 or 2 points, but it does look good for the monthly pivot really. Potentially high lows, higher highs, but again, I just need to sit and watch this a bit carefully. It has already hit the daily pivot. I would just like to give it post 8 o'clock to see what it does. There is a trend line sitting across the highs, which is not yet being touched. If I can get it on there properly, across there. So that in itself would be a line in the sand. If it starts breaking beyond that, well, then it looks like it's got the potential up for its daily R1 monthly pivot sort of zone. but I would like to see it through all of the markets and not just the yen doing its own thing. Um, yeah, there is potential. We could still see money being repatriated, which would cause the yen to strengthen a little bit. But uh, I would expect most of that's done by now. It's so close to the month end. These companies now they do it and they hedge themselves and make sure they've done it before the end of the year normally. Okay, leave it to lastday.com. Aussie dollar. So the Aussie dollar, well, it's continued making lower lows here. Really is struggling. I keep on saying it's the weakest pair. It may be worth trying to sell this into anything decent in terms of a rally if it gets back towards the 4-hourly 50-ish sort of area, maybe a reasonable potential. It's just what we could be watching in the short term, how it does against the 60-50, for example. It's come up short of hitting the S1 and hasn't quite caught the R1. And, well, the range is a little bit tight, but if the other market's a bit rallying, it may be just worth watching it in terms of maybe a sell if you want to hold it, dare I say, over the Easter. But it may still have potential downside there. And the Canadian dollar. Canadian dollar's done pretty well from the price of oil. Oil slipped off a little bit here, and well, so has the Canadian dollar. It's pushed back up towards it. Hasn't touched its weekly pivot. Well, today could be the day. It's within a smidgen of doing so. Um, Still got enough bearishness in that market when you look down at its 4-hourly lower highs, mostly through. Although I suppose we've now broken this high here, so we've got higher lows coming in this shorter time frame. Could still push off that monthly pivot. Very bitty day we saw yesterday. Um, Switching up, pulling back, pushing through. Very choppy. And if you're an intraday trader, this choppiness really we don't want to have. I want something more trendy, unless I can just play the chop. And I mean, it's a big enough chop to maybe play, but not really interested in it at the moment. But today it's a little bit cleaner. Maybe there's opportunities at some point this morning to push up to see if we can get into that, let's say, the weekly pivot, daily R1 sort of zone. That's pretty much it in terms of other options. Sorry, I didn't mention there isn't a lot on the yen today of any significance, which is unusual, which may allow it to continue its upside if it wants to move that way. There's nothing else sitting out there that's I can see can get in its way from that point of view. It's really up to how the markets run today, whether they just end up a bit chop as people take a bit of an early leaf, or whether they give us some trends. Anyway, that's it for me. Oh, sorry, one thing I didn't mention is the key news out today. Overall, there's not a lot really. 9:30, we've got the final GDP current account coming from the UK, which I don't expect to see a massive movement there. The GDP figure itself, it rarely moves. Aside of that, at 1:30, we've got the Canadian GDP, and because it comes out on a monthly basis, has a lot less effect on the market. Even if it differs a little bit, it may just affect the Canadian dollar at that point. So watch out for volatility at that time. I should think they'll be more interested in the personal consumption, etc., than the actual headline GDP numbers. But again, it's a monthly outlook, so we don't tend to see much in the way of change. So have a great one. Bye for now.